everybody's read Mark chapter 6, and we'll try to go through this. There's a lot in chapter 6. Matter of fact, if you're a good teacher or a good preacher, you can make all sorts of lessons out of 6, but we're going to take it like a Reader's Digest condensed version. We're going to pick out some stuff and talk about it. But Jesus goes back to his hometown of Nazareth, and his disciples go with him there in verse 1. And it comes down to Sabbath, he goes to teach in the synagogue. And what do the people say about him? That's a question.
Is this not the carpenter?
And they call it, what's he called in Matthew, which is, a person should study this. You know, there's different, as you go through the gospel, this particular deal is also recorded in Matthew. What's he called in Matthew? Do you know? Carpenter, something. Okay? Trick question. But and that's in Matthew 13. One of the verse down here, it says he could do no miracle. Verse 5. What do you think's going on there that said he could do no miracles? I don't know how. And again, I'm reading from the New American Standard, so I don't know if King James says particularly that. Can you read verse 5 in King James? Somebody.
It says mighty.
You'll have to speak louder for me.
It says mighty work.
You do the works, okay. Why do you think that is? He couldn't do them or just didn't do them?
The people didn't have any faith.
Didn't have any faith? So if they ain't going to believe in him, he ain't going to do the miracles. Would that be... because in verse, he also goes on and talks about marveled at their unbelief. And I'd like to speak a little bit about belief. We say we believe in God, right? Anybody in here don't believe in God? We believe in God. But what kind of faith would it take, or a loss of faith, if they do something like this, that he would say he marveled at their unbelief? Do you remember, and I like to think about this as a back up to, in Luke, a story about the centurion's servant was, and he marveled at his faith. Now, here, the centurion more than likely was a Gentile. He probably wasn't a Jew. And yet he believes, what about Jesus? You remember that story? He sends his guy out to catch Jesus and say, would you come? And I've got a servant that I know you can heal. What did he say about him in relationship to Israel? Anybody?
He believed he was the Messiah.
He did. And he wasn't even probably not a Jew, probably a Greek at best. He said, all over Israel, I couldn't find this kind of faith. When he told Jesus, you don't have to come to my house. Just say the word and he's done. And how Jesus marveled at that. Would we be like all of those? Have you ever stopped and look at yourself and really think about the belief that you've got in Jesus Christ? This is my daughter here, the baby. She acts like it most of the time. But she said, isn't it great that we don't live in a place like
Nigeria.
Huh?
Nigeria.
Nigeria. What would be in danger of today if we lived in Nigeria? Gathering like this.
We'd be dead.
We'd be dead. Who's over here said?
They said that.
Yeah. You know, we have such a marvelous country to live in to begin with, but yet we sometimes don't think about it. And I've got a story that I'll tell you Wednesday night, because Wednesday night is when I have to do my devotional on Wednesday night. And I ain't going to tell you till then. But what happened to me this past week, another one of those wake up type deals that happened to me. That'll be Wednesday night. So there's a spoiler. Be marveled at their unbelief. Okay. Hit the right deal? That's wrong. There he goes, and he sends out the 12. You can find this again as you look through the Gospels. You're going to find them in different areas where he sends out the 12. But it says, take nothing with you. Why did he send them out with nothing? Anybody thoughts? I mean, this is opinion.
My opinion is it makes him the one that depend on God. Faith in God instead of their own.
You ever agree with that? That's the reason he sent them out with nothing. You know, I'm not one that kind of goes along. I mean, I go along with what he says, but if I was being sent out, first thing I'd do is fill up my car, make sure I got some money in my pocket and a credit card before I'm going to go. Daryl has asked me to go with him down into, where is it he goes? Down in Central America. I guess he does it about every year. But he asked me if I wanted to go. I don't want to go down there. And it's got to be pretty safe, but I'm not worried about that. I don't like to get out of the United States myself, especially when I can't speak their language. Take nothing with you. Notice on there I've got members of the way. This is another one of those, what happened to me in life. Years ago, and I think Ruth might be able to remember, I don't remember if she was even born at the time, there were some people in our area who were going to hold they called it a gospel meeting, and they were friends of ours, and so we went with them, and these people came to teach, if you will. All they did was read the Bible. And that was the whole meeting. They read the Bible. But anyway, we invited, it was two ladies, we invited to our house to have something to talk about. I'd like to learn about you. And so I had to ask him. I remember the Church of Christ. Anybody asked me, that's what I say. Remember the Church of Christ. I said, who are you all? What do you, I know you're Christians, and I used that word. When they did, they looked at each other. And I thought that was odd. I called them Christians, and they looked at each other. And so I said, why did you look at each other when I said that? And she said, well, you got to realize the Christians were called Christians by outsiders, not by people they associated with. And so here's me scratching my head. And she said, where do they call Christians in the Bible? And it's 3 times. And I thought, well, more than that. But it's 3 times, and each time it's called, they're called that by somebody from the outside. Except in Peter, where it says, if you suffer as a Christian, and more than likely, he was using that kind of like if you suffer as a redneck. It was outside people that called them Christians. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with being called Christian. We were wrong where I'm going with this. But she said, we're members of the way. Because that's how they refer to themselves. And my research has kind of come around to believing that's right. I mean, not that I'm not going to call myself a Christian or nothing like that, but they were very hard on believing what the Bible says to do. That's what you do. They didn't believe in church buildings. They didn't believe in. It says here to send them out with no script or nothing else, and that's the way they went to teach. There was two of them run together each time, and they depended on the very things that he says here, and very strong in their belief on that. It was interesting to talk to him. And I know I couldn't have done it if I had been in their religious belief. I couldn't have done that. And they go from house to house, just like it says there, and stay with people who allow, and stay with them as long as it was allowed. Then they would move on. They'd hear about somebody else. Somebody would send, and they'd go to the next place. But they lived with them, helped with the family. But it was interesting to me. Anybody ever run into some of this kind of stuff? Anybody awake?
You talking about, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, she just shook her head. She was awake.
You're talking about going to a different country to preach or stuff, and he told them not to take anything. Later on, in Luke, I think 22:35 here, he talks about, he reminds them that first I told you not to take any of this stuff, but now I'm telling you, you need to take it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to a foreign country, you need to take some money. That's what he tells them in Luke 22.
And it just said a good reason to, as you study the Bible, to check those places that it references, so that you can understand what they were doing. Yeah, it does change tremendously. But
Dennis,
yeah,
Matthew's account records why Jesus told them to do what they did. And here's what he said in Matthew 10, verse 9. He says, provide neither gold, nor silver, nor copper in your money belts, nor bag for your journey, nor 2 tunics, nor sandals, nor staffs, for a worker is worthy of his food.
whatever word.
And so his philosophy was the people are going to take care of you. If you're out here working for them and helping them, then they need to provide for you and take care of you.
Very true. And that's the way these people believe, because they would work for whoever they would stand with. Comments or questions? See if it's right button. The next part of the chapter, it goes into John's fate. This is not in line, if you will, however you want to call it, where one place goes to the next, goes to the next. Mark is written a little different. He's telling people, probably the Romans, they've heard all these things, and there's a lot of possibility he was in Egypt or in what's that town down there? Trying to think where it's on the Egyptian coast. What? Alexandria. Probably is in Alexandria. And he's trying to fill them in on things that probably some of them have heard, because there was a hub, if you will, like I said a couple of weeks ago. Alexandria was one of the hubs of Christianity at that particular time. And so they weren't necessarily in Judea and Jerusalem and stuff like that. Most of what they would have heard, he's going to try to retell them. But you notice there, as you read through that in chapter 6, that Herod, and they would have known about Herod, he's worried that John had risen. John the Baptist had risen from the dead and was doing all these miracles. Why would he be worried about that?
He was the one that caused his death.
He was. He killed him. Beheaded him. why did he behead John? This ain't in the chapter, but I hope somebody. Why did he kill John?
For a woman.
For a woman? Women are bad news. Okay, what did the woman, who actually asked for his head? The who?
The daughter of the woman here at Mary.
Okay, and the daughter had asked her mother how to do it. So it was her mother that actually did the asking, but was the one who wanted it, but it was a daughter who, go back and look at that particular, maybe that's in John. But anyway, Herod's word that John is risen from the dead, and tells you a little bit about Herod. He had to believe a little bit in a spiritual blind. And by the way, how many tours of Galilee did Christ, where he goes up and preaches in around Galilee and Nazareth, the Decapolis, that's an easier word to say. How many different tours did he make up there? If you take any particular one of them, most you'll get two, but if you study the deal out, it looks like he apparently made 3 different tours of study or preaching up in that area on 3 different times. Do you agree with that?
I don't know. I'd have to study it.
Well, I know you and I had a discussion on this one time. The reason I pointed you out.
I know he had 2 for sure.
We know he had 2, but it appears that there was a third one. Because of the big celebration that they have every year. Because he cleaned the temple at least twice. And as you put these deals together, it's interesting what you find out. And the casual learner like me don't find it. I miss a lot of it, as you can well tell, as you sit there in a seat when I teach. But then at the end of the chapter, the 12 come back, or not, well, yeah. But they leave to go off, and notice they land on the other side, and this is something that gets me. See if it goes. Yeah. Matthew 14 records something. They're feeding the 5,000. Now, again, thinking about ourselves, they're in an area where not much to go on, but there's a humongous group of people following him. And they said, we got to do something so these people can eat. I think that, the guys were thinking ahead. We got to, and they want Jesus, you disperse them so they can go get something to eat. But what did Jesus say to them in verse 37?
You feed them.
You feed them. Now, any one of us in here, we have things to eat on our certain Sundays. How many people, does one person do that? Takes a whole bunch of ladies. But think about this. If you were telling Jesus and he said, you feed them. What does that do to your faith? Opinion question. Matthew 14, we find out there's two people. And the one he tells you feed them was Philip. He tells Philip, you feed them. What do you think Philip's thinking at that particular time? That's an opinion question. Everybody's got an opinion. What do you think Peter thought when or Philip thought? He said, you feed him.
Well, the first thing that came up was the money side of it.
Right, that is true. Hey, we got that kind of money.
I think it shows their spirit of unbelief, which is one just points right back at all of us. We sit here and think that this is what we believe, this is what we believe. I think we pick and choose the advantages and the blessings that God gives us versus the good that comes out of hard tasks. And when God asks us to do something and we say we can't, we just right there couple ourselves with the people in Nazareth that didn't have the belief of what God could do. Because down in, further in the chapter, it says that they had not gained any insight from the incident of the loaves. And we have to have the belief that no matter what God gives us to do or Jesus commands us to do, that it is always for our good, regardless of whether it's easy or hard. He says that in Deuteronomy. All of my commands, if you obey them, are for your good always. And here's an incident where it's so easy to just say, I can't. Forget it. I don't have the means. I don't have the speaking ability. That's what Moses said, right?
Right.
Here we don't have the money. We don't have the food. So just jump in the unbelief bucket and sit there. That's where we have to be different. And I don't do that well.
You agree or disagree with her?
Well, that's a real good point, because we've got the advantage over those folks, because we've read the Bible, and we know Jesus did all these miracles, and they were confused. They didn't have all of the knowing from the Holy Spirit through the written word that we have. So we got less of an excuse than they did.
That's true. If we believe the Bible, everybody here believes the Bible, right? Okay. Everybody believes the Bible. And one of the things that I hate to read in there is that I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. I hate that verse, because I'd like to say I can't, or I do say I can't. We never put ourselves into the area where we try to stay close to the wall. There's another person that's mentioned in Matthew as to when he says you feed them. Now, stop and think about this, and I talked a little bit about Andrew last time, or the time before this. Andrew's one of my favorite people, and I wish I could be an Andrew. I mean, you don't see a whole lot about it. How many did he convert in the Bible? Biblically speaking, how many did he convert? One. Who was it? I'm sorry? His brother Peter. He converted and brought his brother. Now, how many thousand did Peter convert? A bunch. We see him all the time. And that's the reason I like Andrew. He doesn't record him talking to a lot of people, but he gets one guy. Ever stop and think about the one person that you might convert? Could end up being a gospel preacher or whatever that could do hundreds. It might end up doing hundreds. Andrew does the same thing when he says, you feed them. Andrew goes out and finds a boy with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Now think about that for just a second. He brings him to Jesus. Now, don't you imagine the rest of the people that were watching that and think, well, what are you going to do with 5 loaves and 2 fishes? Andrew didn't know that he brings what he can find. The point being, as in the end of the chapter, all were satisfied because of what Andrew started. So, going back to this I can't thing and this belief in Jesus Christ and letting Him do the work. Now, do I believe that miraculous things are going to happen? I can't, I ain't gonna say that. Don't go out and say Dennis believes in miraculous things. But I think miraculous things happen sometimes when we believe what the Bible tells us to do. And brought up earlier, I can't, when it comes down to teaching or talking or whatever, going house to house, and I can't do that. I've said that many times. I can't do that. And you know that I can't because you're sitting out there now going, but you can. If you believe in Jesus Christ, He can help you. And He can do that. Now, is He going to put the words in your mouth? Apparently not, because you can listen to me and tell it.
Well, He gives us the word to study and do the best you can. I don't think He expects us perfection. He just wants us to at least have enough faith to try.
Agreed? Disagree? We go out and try, you're surprised at what we can do. And if we've done some studying, there's going to be some stuff that floats up into our minds, so on and so forth. Now, I'm not saying that the Holy Spirit is giving me utterance, or you utterance. I'm not saying that. But I think it's very possible that our memory comes around, shakes us out, and says, hey, and that's going to be my Wednesday night deal, is that by believing what we have studied, we can be able to come up with the answer, or should be able to. And I think once in a while we get a little nudge, but that's me. Comments or questions? Uh-oh. No, you can't talk, he said. Go ahead.
Well, at the end here where it says, they all were satisfied. So clearly on the physical level, none of them were hungry or thirsty anymore. He gave them their physical, what they needed, and they were satisfied. We all know what that feels like, to have a satisfactory meal, not just leave yourself wanting more, right? And then they picked up 12 full baskets and broken pieces, and also the fish, which leads into another characteristic of God, is that He keeps His promise of living life abundantly. He didn't just provide what they needed, which we are promised that He will always give us what we need. He went above and beyond. And so that can help our spirit of unbelief, is that He will provide for us and more when we truly grasp what He's asked us to do. In John 10, verse 10, Jesus says, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. And we're so scared of abundantly because it means we have to work.
Okay.
And it just feeds right back into, shows our unbelief. We can work on that, by being in His Word and doing what He says.
Comments, anybody? Okay. The next part he gets into there is he walking on the water, starting in verse 45. As he leaves the area, and if I hit the right one, wrong way. Walks on the water to the boat. And I'd love to spend time on this, and I've got some time to spend, so hang on, here we go. As he walks out there on the water, first it scared him, says he actually is going to intend to walk by them in verse 48. But he's gone off to pray. They take off and go across the water. Now, it's not the ocean by no means, but my understanding is, from people I've talked to who've been there, the Sea of Galilee is a pretty good sized body of water. And they're out in the middle of it when he comes walking up. Now, it doesn't talk about that here, but they were terribly, and that's the reason I'm going to spend some time on is in Matthew. It gives you a little bit more description, or John, one of the two. And that's where Peter wants to walk on the water. And, you know, he loses his faith and sinks. But think about this. Would you have faith enough to step out of the boat to try?
No.
No? Okay, well, let's. He has to step out of the boat. He wants to do it so bad, and he thinks about it, that, you know, if he hadn't tried, he would have known. Now, he knows you got to depend on Jesus. That part he's got to do. And as soon as he takes his eyes off of Jesus, he begins to sink. Now, here's a question for you. When did Jesus help him?
When he began to sink, he reached out for him.
Yeah, he lost his faith and was going under. That's when Jesus stepped in and saved him. You ever stop and think about that in your own life? When your faith is gone, it's when Jesus is holding the footprints in the sand. That reason that deals with it. We got to try to do some stuff. We got to try and depend on Jesus to pull us out of that. Comments or questions?
Peter's personality was the opposite of mine. He wanted to be a leader. He wanted to step out. If what he did, there was a bunch of people in that boat.
Mm-hmm.
He was the first one. That's what he wanted to do. That's how come Jesus had him in the position he was.
Good
Now,
one.
we've all got different strong points, and that's Peter's strong point.
And you hit on a point there that I want to sound off on too. The other guys in the boat, you know, what do you think those other guys in the boat were saying? Do you think they were saying, "Go, Peter, go"? Or were they saying stuff like, "You can't do that, Peter. You ought to know better than that"? What do you think they would? If somebody says, "Let's go do this, that, or the other," knock every door in this part of the country, or whatever, do we say yes? Or do we say, "Oh, we've tried that before. Didn't work last time"? Which one are we? Are we sitting in the boat, or are we walking on the water? Comments or questions?
They probably thought it was pretty crazy because they already thought it was a ghost.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Anybody know you can't walk on water. Yeah. But I do think that I'm kind of like those people that stayed in the boat. I don't want to try. That's me. They go on. Verse 53, it crossed over, came to land at Gennesaret, however you say that, Gennesaret, and moored to the shore. Now, what do you know about Gennesaret? Hopefully something from last week, or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. What happened? Anybody here last week? What happened? They called it Decapolis, which this area is part of the Decapolis. Do you remember? The Decapolis was a area. Do you remember the hogs that run down the hill? Same place, or same area, where they all ran into the water and died. And remember how happy they were that Jesus was among them?
No, it's the opposite.
It's the
What
opposite.
does he believe?
But notice what's happening now. As they come out there, the people recognized him, verse 54. Up here is just there. And the whole country began to carry their sick and stuff. He took care of it last time. Let's get people down here. But think about that. They ran him off last time he was there. And now they're wanting him to help out. This is important, and that means that you all survive long enough to be done. Any questions or comments?